So folks, because my computer is very old, we are attempting to show what's happening over Zoom as opposed to mirroring my screen directly. So give me one moment because I've never used Zoom before. The whole screen? Yeah, that's easiest. Excellent. I don't want to share sound. There we go. And I'll minimize that. There we go. So I opened PowerPoint on this old laptop today, and it happens that the last PowerPoint I showed, I was in this room. So I've updated my presentation today. I've removed the words that no longer apply. Okay, I'm only kidding, obviously. This is my old presentation, but I have actually used PowerPoint since then. So my name is Stephen Howell. This is 20 minutes of me, in some cases boring you, in some cases updating you, and in some cases you haven't heard me before. So hopefully this will be interesting. But I have an unusual request. My mum is very, very ill, and she is currently following the conference from her sickbed. And she won't hear this bit because my wife is strategically hiding it from her. But I have a camera up here, and I have my phone, and you have phones. And I usually don't like pictures of me, but my mum would like some pictures of me doing this presentation. So would you just take some pictures from my mum, please? And I really do appreciate it. She's very ill, so hopefully a few nice pictures would make her happy. Thank you. So with that said, and if anyone's good at photography, there's a fancy camera up here you can take pictures with too. So with that said, I'm not really going to do any slides. I just put up this slide for fun. Thank you so much. It's point and click. Have fun. Half press focuses, full press takes the picture. Now, so with that, folks, my name is Stephen Howell. You may be able to hear from my accent, I'm clearly from America. No, I'm clearly from Ireland, and I am afraid I can only do this presentation in Irish or English. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, I'm happy to take questions afterwards over beer, where my questions will get gradually better over time and less coherent, but more interesting probably. I have no justification for being here and speaking to you, except many years ago, oh my God, in 2011, many years ago, it gets worse every time I give this presentation, I hacked the Kinect camera, which was a console camera for tracking your body in dance games. It was for the Xbox, so that it would send that information into Scratch. And at the time, I was using Scratch 1.4 and this thing called BYOB, which is now Snap. But when I was using Build Your Own Blocks and Scratch 1.4, it was really, really cool because it let you send data into it from anywhere. Now, unfortunately, modern Scratch and modern Snap have different approaches to how you communicate with them. So that's why I'm here, because Snap is much easier to talk to than modern Scratch. Because Snap lets you do some amazing things with JavaScript. Now, I have only recently learned JavaScript, and this JavaScript you can see here is very bad JavaScript, because it's probably the first JavaScript I've written that was for other people to use. And if you know JavaScript, you'll see that what I'm doing very, very naughtily is I am storing data inside the window object. It's pose data, and this is a pose. In Ireland, if you call someone a poser, that's not a good thing, okay? And if someone calls you a poser and they're Irish, that's definitely not a good thing. However, a pose is when you strike a pose with your body. Now, the one thing I really hate about modern computer technology is that the more advanced and cool it gets, less accessible it is to younger developers. And sometimes they are developers who are young because of their age, and sometimes they're developers who've only started developing recently. They may be my age or older, so they're not very young, but they are still young in their journey as a developer. And when I wrote the software, I was thinking of my kids. I have 4 children. One of them is now so old he's in university, but when I wrote this software for him in 2011, he liked Scratch and he had gone to Coder Dojo. So when Snap came along, it had more advanced features and it let me do more, and that's my small justification for being here. When Jack, my eldest, was programming, however, he only wanted to make games. And being able to let him make games where he interacted with his body was really cool. So instead of a keyboard and a mouse, he could wave his hand. And that data, his hand moving, could go really fast into Snap, and therefore he could make sprites respond as he moved. Now, tomorrow in a workshop, I'll be doing an entire skeleton, tracking different points on your hands, your elbows, your hips, all the different bits of you. And I called the workshop "You Can Dance If You Want To," which is the name of a song I really like. And you can dance if you want to at the workshop. I, however, will not. The idea, though, is that instead of a keyboard and mouse, you can send the data in. Now, some of you are serious researchers. I'm not. I'm doing a PhD very badly. But it's a practice-based PhD on the work I've done on this. And that's only part one. Part one is, what is this stuff? So I call it Pose2Blocks. You can set a pose and send it into a block-based programming language. Now, remember I said it was for younger developers? Okay, I had my kids in mind when I wrote it, but my kids have grown up now. My youngest is 12, she's 13 next month, and she can code better in any of these block-based languages than I can. And when I say you're going to grow up and be an engineer like Daddy, she laughs and says, Daddy's no engineer. Mommy's the engineer. You're a computer scientist. There's a big difference. But you know what? That's okay, because Mommy is an engineer, a real one, an electronic engineer. Daddy's only a computer scientist. But I've changed everything about me because of my kids. When I wrote this software, it was to help my child who had been diagnosed with autism communicate his interests about computer games to his friends. My other kids were diagnosed with other neurodivergent conditions. I was myself. I changed. I left being a full-time academic. I joined a big tech multinational where they would pay me to go around and teach people how to make cloud and AI technologies more accessible. I love the previous speaker because what they were doing is making machine learning more accessible. Ken Khan has a birds of a feather talk that I can't wait for. It's all about, here's this cool thing, and if you know some advanced programming languages and you have a degree, you can use it. Well, can't we say, here's this cool thing, and if you know Snap, you can use it? And that to me is more important. So it's gone, oh, thank you, Max. It's gone from, I did promise to pay you, but you know, you have to, other people have to clap too before you get the money. No, sorry, I'm only kidding. So here's the really cool thing. I didn't know this would happen when I wrote the software. I wrote it for kids, but I put it out in the world, and that's the beauty of open source. You say, here's this thing, download it, have fun. I got 20,000 downloads, and I kind of forgot about it until a professor showed up from the local university and demanded I do a PhD with her. I should have thrown her out of the building, but I didn't, and now I'm stuck doing the PhD, and I'm finishing in September, hopefully. But here's the thing. Medical researchers started downloading this software. And they told me, because I ended up writing 3 journal papers with them, that they wanted to do body tracking experiments with their patients, including cerebral palsy, autism, and stroke rehabilitation. Now, I'm not a medical person. I don't know anything about those things. I can barely spell them. Yet, I can write a little game that tests how high you put your hand up and how many times you can do that in 1 minute. And that turns out to be exactly what the people needed in the medical research. So rather than hiring a team to make a computer game, which would cost them more than they had funding to do, or learning to code in a game programming language like Unity or whatever, which they didn't want or have time to do, these medical doctors and researchers could use Snap to create their advanced medical experiments, but they're using a very simple way to do it for them. So to them, it was really advanced and hard, but it was still easier than learning C++, Java, Python, whatever it is. So I'm going to do a very small demo now as part of my time. I hope I haven't run out of time just yet. And you've seen the socket, the WebSocket code behind the scenes, but I'm going to now show you that what's happening over here is my little Pose2Blocks. And it's a little bit hard to see, so I'll move that down there. And you can, oh, I need to step back a little bit and the sound will go, but I'll come right back. Now, as I'm moving backwards and forwards, I'm using a library, an open source library called MediaPipe from Google, which uses, has a Pose API. And the reason I switched to using that this year was because I used to use the Kinect, which had onboard machine learning for recognizing the pose your body was in and converting that into numbers. Left hand is at XY position, elbow is at XY position. Unfortunately, the Kinect, well, there's two issues with it. One, the older Kinects are discontinued, so you'd have to go looking in an antique shop to find one. They don't work with modern computers, and you can't really say to someone, sorry, you need to go and find an old computer and an old equipment to use this. Today, someone said, oh, we've got an old one in the press somewhere. And I'd have to say, you'll need an old computer in the press somewhere too, which is not good. The other issue is that nowadays, most machine learning solutions, because they need powerful computers, it's easier to run them on the cloud. Send off your data to the cloud and get your results back. Now, I teach how to do that in my day job. If you're based in EMEA, you can invite me to come and teach your students how to do that. If you're a professor, that's my day job. But I want to make this accessible to kids and to people with older computers. Now, not very old. And that's why I love this MediaPipe library. It lets you do pose estimation on your device. Now, if your device is very old, then it will be very slow. Okay, so some schools will say, oh, we've antique computers, it's very slow. Yes, it's going to be slow. But this is a pretty old computer I'm on here. And yes, it's slow. And if I zoom in here, you'll see that Jens will probably slap me on the hand for doing this the worst way possible, maybe, hopefully not. But I'm calling a JavaScript function and I'm pulling the data from my head_x. Jens is throwing his hands up in the air. Hopefully that's a it's okay, not oh my God, what has he done gesture. Now, so I really only learned JavaScript and how to do this for this project. I'm not a JavaScript guy. I can program in just about any other language, but I learned JavaScript to do this, and I'm glad I did because it let me do a lot more with Snap than I knew how to do. So as I move backwards and forwards, it's tracking my head, and I'm going to give you a very small sneak preview. I have a method called draw torso here, and if I right click and I select edit, you'll be able to see, if I zoom in, that I'm using the pen, and I pick up my pen, I set it to a particular color, I go to my left shoulder, XY, I put the pen down, I stamp a little joint, so a little red marker, then I move the pen over to the right shoulder, and then down to my right hip, and then over to my left hip, and back over to my left shoulder. And tomorrow the workshop will be, well, how do we add our arms and legs? And at that point you can start dancing. So I'm going to stand up now for a moment. And that's about the extent of dancing I'm willing to do on stage. Now, if I just jump back over here, all of this is part of my PhD submission, and for those of you who are coders outside of Snap, it's all written in Node with JavaScript. It will be open source as soon as the university click that, yes, you may now download this. Part of the deal is that all of our output in the research group I'm in is open source. However, the university, like many universities, is still getting used to the idea of open source, but hey, that's someone else's problem to deal with. But I hope that code is of use to some people. I'm just going to show, if I scroll up to the very top here, I think this will be of interest to some people, is the entire amount of data that I have access to, including the inner, outer eye for each eye, and your pinky, which is American for your little finger. You learn lots of things when you use American written libraries. And you can see here, why did I rename what they had? Well, I'm using the original Kinect namings, and I didn't want people to have to update all their old programs, because people still to this day in primary schools all around the world, teachers send me the programs their kids have made. I got one from California recently, Mike Tyson Boxing, where you could box. And they're using a program I wrote 10 years ago, and I updated it every 2 years, but in some cases it's the 10-year-old program they're sending me with the samples they've made. And that's just a beautiful thing, because I made it for my kids, and now other kids are learning with it too. So you can see that I'm translating nose to be head position, but you could fork this and get more detailed eye, nose information if you wanted to write a face tracking system for someone who's maybe paraplegic in a wheelchair, and they could move their face but not their limbs. Well, then you have the ability to let them interact with a scratch program, a snap program, a BYOB program, no problem. Here's the data. So I hope I haven't gone over time. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope some of you are able to join my workshop. I'm up against the most challenging workshop tomorrow. That's really not fair. But you know what? If some of you turn up, that would be great. And thank you very much for listening.